Okay, everyone, welcome back. We have another episode of Down the Line on the Below the Belt Sports YouTube channel. We took a week off last week. Nick and I had a few things going on, but we are back this week. We have a lot of baseball to go over. And of course, in the year of the pitcher, we have more no-hitters to go over. Nick, I actually had to look it up because I did forget the other person who threw a no-hitter. And I feel like that just kind of defines what a crazy year it has been. The fact that I forgot that one other person had thrown a no-hitter. So in the past 2 weeks, since we last recorded, we saw Spencer Turnbull of the Detroit Tigers throw a no-hitter. And the very next night, we saw our own Corey Kluber throw a no-hitter. And it was a gem. It was awesome. Nick, do you feel like the year that we have seen takes anything away from Corey Kluber's no-hitter? Do you feel like it's any less? Do you feel as a fan that you're like, this one doesn't count, almost in the same way that like when Brett Gardner was hitting his 30 home runs, it's like, all right, yeah, but those home runs don't actually count. Does this feel a little less good, a little less satisfying because of everything that has happened so far this year with the pitching just being unreal, the clear, fluctuation of the baseballs? How do you feel about Corey Kluber's no-hitter, Nick?
I would have thought it would take away, but it didn't at all. Like I had literally said the night before how Rob Manfred ruined the no-hitter for me. I was like, Spencer Turnbull, 5th no-hitter of the year on whatever, midway through May. I was like, come on, like this is fucking fake. Like what are we doing here? So, but then seeing your own team do it the next night, like that's awesome. Like I have nothing to compare it to is the thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the last one was a Yankee perfect game in 1999 when you and I were 2 years old. So this is the first Yankee no-hitter of our lifetime. Really the first time anyone was close. Like I remember guys getting into like the 6th, 7th inning with them, but it's not like we've seen a guy lose it in the 9th before. So it was incredible, watching him get to that point and finishing it off just was so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I someone actually asked me that exact question. Is like, do you feel like having like 7 no-hitters this year is taken away from Kluber's? And I'm like, look, I'm not going to act like it definitely feels a little unusual, but I mean, a no-hitter for your team is a no-hitter for your team. That's not something you get to see that often. I mean, and I compare it to the fact that one time I went to a Red Sox game. It was at Fenway, and it was Red Sox Yankees. And Porcello came one hit away. He wanted to throw in a complete game shutout. He came one hit away from a no-hitter. And I thought to myself, if I'm a fan of baseball, it's almost like what Evan Roberts and Craig Carton go through all the time. Am I a fan of baseball? Or am I a fan of my team? And that night, I think I would have been a fan of baseball. Like I would have loved to have seen a no-hitter in person, even though it was against my team. And this is kind of a similar feeling where it's like, I know that there's probably something up with the baseballs, whether it's the seams, whether it's they actually deaden them, whatever it is, it happened for my team. And I'm just thrilled about it. I'm not going to look too deep into it. I'm just happy that it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, will people look back on this in 5 or 10 years and be like, yo, that year where there was, 11 or 12 no-hitters, whatever we end up with, like, yeah, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb and be weird. Like you said, like no one's going to look at Brett Gardner's 2019 and say, oh, he had 28 home runs, just had a good year. Like, no, the baseballs were clearly very juiced. So people will have that revisionist history as they should. I mean, you look at the steroid era, comparing that to the dead ball era where the best hitters in baseball were hitting like 6 or 7 home runs a year in the early 1900s. So it's all relative to the era that you play in. At the end of the day, a no-hitter is awesome. It's still rare. It's still history. And it was just unbelievable to watch your team, finally get one.
Yeah. So other big news moving on, throughout the MLB these past 2 weeks, we did see our first trade of the season. I'll say our first significant trade of the season. I'll say the Brewers got shortstop from the Rays, Willy Adames, and also Trevor Richards, reliever. And the Rays got back JP Feyereisen and Drew Rasmussen. So 2 relievers for the Rays, a shortstop and reliever going back to the Brewers. I'm actually a really big fan of this trade. I thought it works really well for both sides. I mean, the Rays clearly know when they acquire a pitcher, they have a reason for it. I know Feyereisen has a great changeup, a good slider, a really, really good slider. So, I mean, I think he's going to work really well in that pen. I'm sure the Richards and Rasmussen part is kind of just a swap for swap there. I'm sure it has something to do with salary because they're kind of relatively the same pitcher. But I mean, the Brewers getting Willy Adames and giving up on Urias, who's only 23 years old, which is kind of crazy. They kind of punted on him this young in his career, but they clearly saw something. But they're a defense and pitching team first. Clearly, that lineup is not going to sustain. And Willy Adames is a good shortstop, but he is elite at defense. And if you're going to be a pitching and defense team, you got to put shortstop first. You got to put up the middle first. It's kind of why I wanted, someone like the Marlins to get Andrelton Simmons. They have a young staff. It kind of helps their pitching staff. Having a good shortstop helps you so much. Brewers have unreal pitching, and now they just made their defense that much better. So Rays, I'm sure these guys are going to turn into Cy Young winners. It's going to be very frustrating to see these relievers. I'm sure they're going to figure out something. They're going to be like the Eric Gagne when he won a Cy Young reliever. But I really like this trade for the Brewers too.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, I'm sure these guys will pan out for the Rays. Like they've reached the point where they deserve the benefit of the doubt and blind optimism when it comes to acquiring pitchers. I know they had kind of just helped Hunter Strickland. I don't want to say resurrect his career, but he was having his best performance, in years in Tampa, and they just traded him away. So I'm sure they'll bring these two guys in. They'll be impact. And what I didn't realize, I assumed that Willy Adames was probably going to get moved at some point because you knew Wander Franco was coming up. I didn't realize they have like two other pretty highly touted shortstop prospects at AAA, like right now. Like who's the one they called up?
Taylor Wells. Yeah, they called up Taylor Wells, and he's like unreal. Then they have another one he tweeted. I forget his name, but he actually tweeted something like congratulating Taylor Wells. And like saying to like Wander Franco, like your turn will come soon too. So like I think what they plan on doing is bringing up Franco and like throwing him at like third base or second base, something like that, similar to what the Yankees did with Glaber. But I mean, the fact that they have just like six, like literally like a line of elite shortstop prospects just coming up means they're probably just going to do the same thing. They're going to trade this Taylor Wells guys in 3 years when Wander Franco finally comes up.
Yeah, it's absolutely stupid.
It's unreal how many shortstops they have, but regardless, they have become one of the best teams in the league. Everyone expected the Rays to be good, but they have been red hot. I think they won 10 in a row.
Last today was
11 now. Yeah, 11 popped themselves up to the top of the AL East. So I mean, it's getting competitive up at the top. I mean, as we expected it. I don't think we really thought the Red Sox would sustain this level of success, but they have. So I think everyone's within 3 games now. Let me check the standing. No, everyone's within a game now. I mean, not counting the Blue Jays and the Orioles because they don't really count. But I mean, Yankees are a game behind the Rays. The Red Sox are a game behind the Rays. So I'm sorry, half a game behind. So, the AL East is coming together. As for moving over to the NL East, 16 guys on the IL for the Mets. I mean, that is unreal. We got Jacob deGrom coming back. I think he's going to make his next start. I actually think Tuesday is the day they gave him.
Yeah, he's coming back.
It was actually pretty funny to watch him pitch against those AAA guys. That was actually very funny to see. But I mean, Nick, I didn't know that all these guys were getting hurt at the Trop. But what happened with the Tampa series?
I mean, I didn't watch all those games, but I know for a fact that McNeil and Conforto both got hurt. They both hurt their hamstrings at the Trop. I mean, dude, this place is straight up just a liability to players' health. I mean, it's why Giancarlo Stanton's on the IL right now. We've seen Aaron Judge land on the IL from there. And obviously you could say what you want about those two guys. And, they've had their share of injuries the past couple of years, but Jeff McGill and Michael Conforto are not guys you pin as injury prone whatsoever. And now they said on Cardinal Roberts, a significant hamstring injury. Like they're supposed to be back like late June, early July. Like it's not like, oh, he tweaked it, he'll be back in 10 days. Like they're going to be out for probably around 6 weeks total. So it's an embarrassment that this place is even in baseball. The fact that we're in the year 2021 and it's causing this many injuries, you can have balls hit the catwalks in play. Like I know even when Garrett Cole threw that great game there a couple weeks ago in the first inning, Meadows hit what was supposed to be a pop-up to Judge that he was camped under. I think it was an estimated distance of like 310 feet, and it lands like right behind second base and ends up going for a double. Like you can't have that. Like that's like funny in like Little League or like when you're playing wiffle ball in like your buddy's yard and it's a little too small and like you have to like make rules for it. Like this is Major League Baseball. Like I would have lost my mind. Thank God the playoffs was neutral site last year. Honestly, I can't imagine having to play playoff games there. So they need to do something about it sooner rather than later. We've been beating this drum for a while. I know the talk right now is around the A's and then possibly moving to Vegas or getting a new stadium in Oakland. Get the Rays a new stadium. Either move them out of St. Petersburg into Tampa, closer to where the Bucks play. Get them a stadium with a retractable roof, like an actual respectable Major League ballpark. Or move them to Nashville or give them to a city who gives a damn. I'm sorry. It's not my fault that the Rays are too incompetent that they signed a fucking 80-year lease with Tropicana Field, an arena that was made for hockey. So it's an absolute embarrassment. It's a danger to the league. And at this point, something needs to be done. But we have an incompetent commissioner, so nothing will be.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we always talk about how cool it is that baseball is one of the few, or probably the only sport where like the actual stadium itself and actual dimensions of the field are different, for every single field. That's what makes like so many guys' dreams to go see every major league stadium. It's why so many people want to do it, because every field is actually different. It's not just you're seeing different teams, you're seeing a different dimension. But fuck the Trop. I mean, that is not something. I mean, Nick, I know you said you've been there. I have no interest in going there because that is an absolute shit stain of a stadium.
Terrible place to watch a baseball game. Terrible.
Oh, really? It's not even
it's like they have like activities there. Like this was also, I went like 12 years ago. So this was like right before the Rays were actually good. So like the best way I could describe it is it's like being at a minor league stadium kind of where they have like activities and stuff, like where you could maybe have a good time. But like the stadium itself is just like so depressing. It's like dark in there. It's just, it's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not one of those things. It's not like a bucket list stadium. Like, like it's not. I'm sure I'm gonna try to work my way down there at some point just to complete the bucket list. But it's gonna be like I'm gonna see that catwalk up there and be like, this is an absolute joke that we had. Like the major league players are trying to play around the stadium that they play in.
No, dude. And listen, you could say what you want about stadiums. Like you said, I love that baseball is the only sport where every stadium's unique. Like if you want to throw jabs back and forth about the short porch at Yankee Stadium or the Green Monster at Fenway, or you want to complain about the tarps in the upper deck at Oakland and talk about how ugly it is, whatever it is, like each stadium's unique, that's fine. But when you have balls in play hitting catwalks and guys getting hurt at an insane pace, the place should not be a major league stadium. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Moving on to some good news. It feels like Yankees are back. It feels like Glaber is back, and the pitching has been, I mean, stellar. I feel like just almost like underselling it. You completely undersold it. I mean, I think they went 35 innings, wound up being the final total for score.
It's still going.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, 35 and counting for starters, not giving up a run, which is just, I mean, a blessing. I mean, it is everything that we could have asked for as Yankee fans at the beginning of the season. Just these pitchers coming together. I mean, obviously the Kluber no-hitter, unreal. Cole going to do what he has to do, but Hermanis showed up. Monty showed up big time, especially in a game where people really didn't expect him to against the White Sox. And Taillon, I mean, even though he really doesn't look like he's had his best stuff all year, he's figuring it out. And you know what? That's what you have to do. You have to grind out a good win. You got to grind out like him 5 innings of just scoreless baseball, and they're finding a way to get it done. I mean, I don't know if it's credit to Aaron Boone. I don't know if it's credit to the pitching coaches, but I mean, they're getting it done right now. And at a time when the Yankees really need it, because the offense outside of Gleyber Torres and Aaron Judge right now has kind of just been inconsistent. And, having these pitchers consistently going out, throwing gems, has put us right back into the top of the AL East.
Yeah, it's a position they really haven't been in honestly, since I can remember, right, where starting pitching is picking up the offense and winning games. The Yankees in years past has been mash your way to victory and then, get an early lead, pray for 5 from most of your starters, and then go to the bullpen, right? It's been the opposite. They're getting length from their starting pitchers. They've all been effective. I was banging the drum that Jordan Montgomery should be skipped on Friday just because of how much the White Sox rip left-handed pitching. And I like Monty, but he wasn't coming off his best outing. The White Sox were 23-2 against lefty starters since the start of 2020, the 2 being Mike Minor. They had a 900 OPS against left-handed starters, and he absolutely carved them up, 7 shutout with 11 Ks. So you couldn't see that coming. I know the offense has been inconsistent, and you could probably say that outfield right now is their biggest problem going forward with the injury to Hicks and the inconsistency from Clint. But the main thing all year has been the Yankees having pitchers, and namely starting pitchers after Garrett Cole, that they could trust in October. You look at that Tampa series, you had 2 starting pitchers who you trusted, one of them in Tanaka, who did not pitch well. So you had Cole, and you had 3 relievers who you trusted in Green, Britton, and Chapman, who were absolutely burnt out by Game 5, especially without the off days. Right now in the Yankees, you trust at least 4 of your starting pitchers. Jamison Tyone has been a mixed bag, and that's like your worst starter right now, which is pretty crazy to me. And he's had definitely a handful of good starts, and you can kind of see the stuff coming around. A guy that hasn't pitched in 2 years because of Tommy John, and he's your biggest problem in the rotation, and you have at least 4 relievers you can trust without Britton. It's absolutely ridiculous right now. So hopefully they can keep this rolling, keep it up. Just stay healthy. The offense will come around at a point. Luke Voigt just got back. I expect DJ to be better. Stanton hopefully coming off the IL Tuesday. Things are rolling right now, but as long as they can figure out which 2 to 3 guys are going to start playoff games after Garrett Cole come October, they'll be in a good position.
Nick, and this is a question I feel like I kind of internally ask myself a lot when I'm watching the Yankees, and I feel specifically with like Stanton because he gets so streaky. But do you feel like there's a countdown coming or a countdown starting to when like this pitching is going to potentially blow up and come back into our faces, and be like, okay, here's the 5 ERA, consistency that we were looking for. And I feel that way with Stanton because I feel like, he had that crazy hot streak and now he's injured again. Like, I felt like when he was like on his like high horse, just smashing baseballs, I felt like we were counting down the days until either he started striking out again or until he got hurt and, the injury happened. Obviously, some stuff it's out of his control, but, I feel like it's going to happen. Are you kind of having like that same feeling with the starting pitching, or do you feel like they've hit a stride and like we're at a point where we can rely on them, like we rely on our bullpen as like a real strength of this team?
I mean, what they're doing right now definitely isn't sustainable. Even if you look to right before this last turn through the rotation, you had Montgomery's worst start of the year, Cole's worst start of the year, and a pretty terrible start from Tyone in a game they ended up coming back and winning. So they won't be able to keep this up. At the same time, the fact that they're even capable of this, that we've seen these kind of outings from Montgomery, that we've seen this from Herman, that Kluber looks good, that's a really good sign, because those were all things that were not a given whatsoever going into the year. I thought I was high on the Yankee rotation coming into the year because of the depth, and I kind of figured just from a pure numbers standpoint, at least a couple of these guys would work out. I did not think that they would be looking this good this quickly into the season. So the offense is going to have to pick it up. DJ needs to be better. Stanton coming back should help. Voigt, I think, still needs to get his feet under him a little bit. I think he's only played maybe like 8 or 10 games so far. So the offense does need to be better. I think it will be better, but the fact that the starting pitching is this good, hasn't been this good in probably a decade, is definitely really encouraging.
Oh yeah. If the pitching was not good, we would be probably screaming the same stuff that we were screaming at the beginning of the season, where it's like, this team is in a lot of trouble, and, they've literally put the team on their back. And, we literally just had to tip the cap for them. Speaking of guys that have put their team on the back, but it hasn't worked out for them actually, because the Reds suck, is Jesse Winker and Nick Castellanos. They have been absolute studs over the past week. And I think Winker hit like 5 home runs in like 2 days. It's something stupid. Castellanos has, I think, 12 home runs this season. Winker has 13. And the Reds still went 1-6 at home. So, I mean, Nick, remember when we were screaming for Luis Castillo? He has been atrocious. I think he's now 1-7 with like a 5.7 ERA. Like, it is like bad, which means they sell very low on him. We get him. He turns into a stud.
Yeah, he can be had on the cheap at this point. I mean, I think people who were saying trade Glaber for him are feeling pretty silly right now. I think they should have felt silly even regardless. But that being said, I didn't see this coming from Castillo. I thought he was a guy that had too good of stuff to be this bad. And who knows, maybe in a month, we're chalking up to small sample size and he's looking good again, like his old all-star self. So we'll see what happens. Jesse Winker's name is getting thrown around in Yankees trade talks a little bit, just like a lefty power hitting outfielder. That would be awesome. How realistic is that? I don't know. I have to look into how controllable he is in his contract. And Nick Castellanos just has to be one of everyone's favorite players in baseball at this point. That interview when he let the fan say that he told him that to imagine the baseball as Rob Manfred's face, that shit is so fucking funny. He's a good dude. He's an awesome player. So as much as the Reds suck, at least you have a couple guys there who are entertaining as hell.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get into this because we actually have a pretty cool segment coming up. But I feel like Castellanos is kind of like the Dark Knight to I'm trying to figure out how to fit this analogy. And he's Batman in the Dark Knight, Nick Castellanos, and Trevor Bauer is like the Joker, and like Rob Manfred is like society. How they both don't like society, but like Nick Castellanos is the hero and Trevor Bauer is the villain. Did that kind of come together?
I can rock with that. I think that actually makes sense because I think, yeah, no, I definitely like that. Nick Castellanos is kind of the hero. Trevor Bauer is the villain, but you also kind of see where he's coming from sometimes, and he kind of makes a little bit of sense, and you understand why he is the way that he is. Rob Manfred just sucks. So, yeah, no, I like that analogy a lot, actually.
All right. I kind of put it together a little slowly. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to say this, but I'm glad it came together. But that does bring us into our final segment for the show. I saw a lot of conversation about this. I think it was actually Trevor Plouffe that started the conversation. So I figured we would kind of bring this into our show. Who is the best for baseball top 5? This isn't like the best players in baseball, because obviously we could talk all day about that. Obviously Mike Trout's going to be in it, but like, I think you can make the argument Mike Trout is not the best for baseball and for growing the game and for what purpose we're trying to accomplish right now. And, getting notoriety to the game, getting these rules right, getting this people excited about watching baseball and not making all these different changes to it, keeping the game relatively pure, but still exciting. So I think, I don't know, Nick, if you have like your perfect list set up, but like, I kind of have like my top 3 or 4. And then I have like a bunch of guys that like, I just kind of want to say, but I don't know where to put them.
I want to hear which direction you go with first, just because I feel like there's a lot of different guys and ways I could spin this. So let me see where your head's at, and I'll kind of go based off that.
Okay, so I'll go my top 3 first, because after this, I get mad at myself who I put 4, and then 5, my head's spinning. My head is spinning at 5. So number 1, I think relatively consensus is Fernando Tatis Jr. I mean, he's the most exciting player in baseball. Just mashes home runs, looks great doing it. He wears the tight pants that only go to your ankles. And like, if you did that on a Little League field, people were like, you look so stupid wearing that, like either pull him up or wear him down, but somehow he pulls it off. I don't know why that's good for baseball, but it's awesome. Obviously made the Padres, relevant again. He's been the face of their franchise for the past 2 years, been the face of baseball. So he's my number 1. I think pretty consensus. Number 2 for me is Acuna Jr. I love Ohtani, and he becomes my number 3, but I think Acuna is right up there with Tatis as the most exciting player in baseball, and actually the only person in the league who I think can actually accomplish a 40-40 season, because no one steals anymore. Not that he's stealing enough to get 40, but I mean, if he can just do it like 10 more times in a season, he can do the 40-40 season. I don't know why that's a stat that has always stuck out to me. A-Rod did it. I think Bonds did it one year too. Like just guys like that doing like just like those crazy seasons where it's like speed and power is just so not common anymore to be able to actually do that on a base path. So he's my number 2. Tatis, Acuna, Ohtani as my number 3, just for the fact that he's doing things and people outside of baseball are coming to watch him because they're finally getting a little press for him. Now that he's pitching and hitting in the same games, I feel like I've seen a lot of people from other sports be like, yo, what Ohtani is doing right now is crazy. So that's why he's my number 3. And then I'll go to my number 4 before I toss it over to you. And it's Trevor Bauer. As much as, we have been anti-Bauer, he is baseball's best villain. As much as, we kind of just made that analogy before where he is kind of right sometimes in what he's screaming about. We just kind of love to hate him. So he does bring attention to baseball, whether it's good or bad. So that's my top 4: Tatis, Acuna, Ohtani, Bauer, and then I'll toss it to you before we get to 5.
So if I can catch your drift, I understand obviously we're not talking about the 5 best players in baseball. Obviously it helps to be good. I think what you're kind of saying is in terms of growing the game and bringing eyes onto baseball, who does that the best?
And
right?
Excitement around the game. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'll agree with you. Tatis Jr. number one. I think you can make a very good case at this point, even though he's only played still less than 200 games. He's probably the best shortstop in baseball. Like a guy like Trevor Story, like could make this list, except he plays in Colorado on one of the worst teams in the league. So like maybe maybe he's a guy once he's in a big market on a competitor where he's kind of in this conversation at some point. But Tatis is on a good Padres team. He's one of the better players in the league. He plays with such electricity. He's making crazy defensive plays. He hits for power.
The other day, stealing second base. That's awesome.
And also, I feel like it's the perfect marriage too with Don Orsillo calling Padres games. Just every call that guy makes. I don't know if you saw the Jake Cronenworth inside the park home run. Like everything that guy could call like a snail race and make it sound electric. So him getting to call Fernando Tatis Jr., especially when it's like you're only seeing one clip. I think that's another underrated way to grow the baseball game is like if something cool happens and someone just watches a 30-second clip on Twitter and the announcers are boring as fuck, they're not going to get as hype as they would be watching Tatis and Don Orsillo. So that's number one. I'm going to go Ohtani number two, just purely for the fact that he's even making regular season baseball in May into like a conversation on the ESPNs and Fox Sports. Is not that I even like those shows anymore or watch them. I think they're all horrible, but how many people just pay attention to the NBA and NFL because that's all they're getting thrown at them. So to be able to work baseball into that in any way, and yeah, I get it, sample size. The guy's thrown like 30 innings this year, despite his ability. But being like a league leader in home runs and ambassador for Japan,
and
he's still super young. Yeah, the guy and the guy runs like a gazelle. Like he's absolutely ridiculous. So I'll put him at number two. Acuna three for a lot of the same reasons as Tatis. Great player, speed, 40-40 guy, like you said, power, everything. My number four is actually going to be Juan Soto, just because I feel like people kind of forget since the Nationals haven't been as good these past 2 years, what that guy did in 2019, going on the road, hitting Garrett Cole. Responding to the Bregman homer with an absolute cock shot off of Verlander and copying him with the bat to first base thing. I think he's one of the guys that has a chance to be one of the all-time greats at the end of this, especially hitting-wise. I think he doesn't get as much love because the team he plays on, he's not really electric in the field as a Tatis, even if his efficiency isn't good, or an Acuna. So Soto. And then, I don't know, there's a lot of guys I could go with here. Bauer, definitely, but I feel like at the same time, Trevor Bauer also turns people off. Like, I think this offseason did not do him a lot of favors. I think he tries to play into it too much. Like, he'll say something right, and then he'll just piss you off at the same time. So he definitely does a lot. I'll go.
You want me to give you my list of people?
Yeah, give me a couple more because I don't know if I could go number five. I think we just got to kind of list guys at this point.
Yeah. So here's the people who I am battling with at number five. I feel good about my top four. I agree with you on Trevor Bauer and the fact that he turns people off, but I feel like he's brought enough people that the net profit has been high enough that I can
understand that.
I can consider him there. So this is like 6 or 7 people. It's Nick Castellanos, Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Jacob deGrom, Vlad Jr., Stanton, Soto, Tim Anderson. I don't know if I said him, and Anthony Rizzo. I think Anthony Rizzo is actually really good for the game too, more for what he was doing in 2016 when that Cubs World Series came out. He was a great story. He still continued to be a great personality in baseball. Just like talking to guys at first base, they always mic him up. For whenever the Cubs play on ESPN, they just mic up Anthony Rizzo and just let him have at it. But I don't know. I feel like that fifth spot is really hard to narrow it down. If I had to choose one, I don't want to say Soto for the fact that I think people get a little pissed off by him with that, with that when he takes a pitch and he does like that thing. Like
it is annoying as hell.
More annoys me than it does excite me.
Here's what it is. It's annoying, but he's good enough to pull it off. If he wasn't as good as he was, it would annoy me more than it does.
The reason why I want to kind of put Stanton at number 5 here is because at his peak, people want to watch him. People want to tune into baseball to see him hit a ball 500 feet. Do you know what I mean? People aren't necessarily watching Judge to see how far he can hit the ball, even though he obviously can. Even Gary Sanchez can do that too. But I feel like that's just the aura around Giancarlo Stanton is that he mashes baseballs. He hits the ball hard, and that kind of makes people want to watch when he's up. But I still don't think that I would put him above someone like Jacob deGrom even, or Mike Trout, who are just beyond generational talents. So I have a lot of difficulty at 5. I think just out of respect, I would have to go Mike Trout. But I also want to.
I don't think Mike Trout does the 5th most. I think here's the thing. I think you and I, like being baseball guys, like I think people inside baseball appreciate Mike Trout. Like I feel like he's kind of just a name. Like I'm not trying to rip on the guy. And like, again, this is like a very, subjective thing that we're doing, like who has the most impact. Like I'm sure like he's up there in jersey sales. And like, obviously we know he's already an all-time great, but it's like, we've seen him in the playoffs less than a handful of games. He's so great, but it's like he's not really outspoken. So it's like, is he really a top 5 like influential, getting eyes on the game of baseball? I liked what you said. I think Vlad Jr. was a really good answer. Castellanos, Cole deGrom right up there. Stanton when he's hitting piss missiles. I think Aaron Judge for sure. I think he's got that charismatic leadership. New York. I'm not trying to say he's Derek Jeter, but I think he's probably the closest thing we've had to Derek Jeter personality presence wise as a Yankee ever since he retired, which is a pretty big statement to make. I think in kind of the same breath, since he's, another guy that brought a lot of swagger to New York, I think Pete Alonso, when he's going right, I think brings a lot of attention considering how big the Mets fan base is. You could even throw in like a Xander Bogaerts for what he's done for the Red Sox. I think my guy at number 5 is going to be someone who you actually didn't even mention. It might be Bryce Harper. He's kind of got that villain thing going on. He's a violent swing. He's got like a 900 career OPS. The hair, it's a very much love him or hate him. Like the Bryce Harper's overrated take got taken so far that he's actually now underrated. You see him every day as opposed to guys like Bauer, Cole, Bieber, deGrom, where you only see him every 5th day. So I think Bryce Harper, I think it's also a little bit tough because the Phillies now are almost just solidifying themselves as like a middle of the pack team, especially when you see teams like the Braves and the Mets and the moves they're making in division. But Bryce Harper is definitely a guy that would be in that conversation for me. I think do I think he's a top 5 player in baseball ability wise? No, but do I think when you combine his ability, the way he plays the game, his personality, his public perception, I think he could possibly be up there.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought about Harper too for a second, but I kind of thought these guys were a little bit better. But I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, I actually like very much like Bryce Harper. I was kind of on the I hate him train for a little bit because he kind of seemed like a douchebag. But I mean, he got that persona for not like when I look back at it, like for really no reason. I mean, he was nothing but a success in Washington, and then he wanted to leave. And everyone was kind of like, oh, he's not worth whatever money he wants. And like, when you look back, he kind of is. Like, he's really only making like $25 million a year. There's a lot of guys making a lot more than him, like Francisco Lindor, making $34 million. And Bryce Harper's having an MVP season right now. So, I mean, I'm all in on Bryce Harper being a top 5. He absolutely deserves to be. He also brought in a lot of hype around baseball when he came up. So, I mean, from what he was to what he continues to be, he's a name that I think people hear outside of baseball and are like, oh, I at least know who that is. So I think I want to go Harper 5, but just to differentiate, I think I'm going to go Vlad Jr. in my number 5 spot for this reason. I think he connects generations because he brings kind of like the older group of baseball who loved watching Vlad, Vlad Guerrero, regular Vlad Guerrero Sr., grow up, hit baseballs, hit, balls that were bouncing. You know what I mean? Like he had curveballs that were bouncing 58 feet and he was hitting them for singles and home runs. Like it was unbelievable what he could do. He was an all-star MVP. Like he was unreal. And people who kind of had that name recognition, they see Vlad Jr. kind of doing similar stuff now and just being an absolute wagon. He's having an unreal season right now, one of the top hitters in OPS. And he's exciting to watch. And he just mashes baseballs in the same way that Stanton does, but he just brings that generational aspect to it, as well as just being, just filthy at baseball. So I think I'm going to settle on that, but that 5th, 6th, 7th spot could be really, really put anywhere.
I think another honorable mention for me is just some of the Houston Astros in general. Like, I don't know if you can really pick one guy, but I think Altuve, Correa, and Bregman mostly just being the villains. I think there was so much around the Astros cheating scandal, the fact that it even got this much traction after going through a pandemic and having, no baseball for a while, and, it really not being the major news story for just about a year, and people still caring this much about it. And the fact that they, won 2 pennants, won a World Series, went toe-to-toe with the Yankees twice, beat the Yankees twice, who people also hate. So I think it's kind of a battle of two villains in a lot of people's mind. I think as much as we all hate them and as much as they've maybe tarnished their name in baseball history, I don't think there's any doubt that they've done a lot to bring attention onto baseball these past 5 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember when we were talking about it, like when it first all happened, we're like, is this good for baseball or is it bad for baseball? And I think at the end of the day, now that people have gotten over a little bit, it wound up being good for baseball.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bad for Yankee fans and Dodgers fans.
Yeah, minus the actual cheating part of it, and like take that away from it, and how that's like bad for the actual game of baseball. What the attention did for it wound up being good for baseball.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to hear other people's thoughts. Trevor Plouffe opened up a great discussion. I think it is really hard to list these, like, top 5, because there are a lot of great young talents in baseball right now, as well as, people who have, deserve respect, like Trout, DeGrom, Cole, Tim Anderson, even Castellanos, guys who, we didn't cover that much, who just kind of deserve a, tip of the cap a little bit in terms of being, what they've done to grow the game. So I would love to hear more people's comments, comment below at us. I would love to hear more people talk about it.
It's also very open-ended too, right? I think you can kind of defend your point as well as you want. Like, I know you and I didn't put Trout in our top 5, but like you could I could get a comment saying you two guys are morons not putting Mike Trout. He's had, he's accumulated the WAR of a Hall of Famer in the first half of his career, some past elite Hall of Famers in the first half of his career. Like, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a little bit the fact that, we've seen this guy for a decade. We haven't seen him in the playoffs. So you're kind of like, Mike Trout at this point. But realistically, like, you're going to look back on this guy and be like, yeah, like Mike fucking Trout. So
it's crazy that we forget about him sometimes and how unreal of a baseball player he is. He went like 2 for like 27 at some point this season and was still batting 370. Like, just like stupid stats. And I mean, I would love to get more people's thoughts. I'll open for discussion. Comment below, add us on Twitter, whatever you want to do. I mean, I would love to keep this going, because I mean, we could literally talk about this all day. There's so many exciting guys in baseball right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's it for this week. Nick, you got anything else?
No, all good. Everyone stay safe. Memorial Day weekend. Stay hydrated.
Yeah. No power rankings yet, though. No power rankings. I think we said June 15th, right?
June 15th our date?
Yeah, we said no carbs until June 1st, no power rankings until June 15th.
I gotta say, I saw out of the corner of my eye, I didn't click the article, but I scrolled past the power rankings today. I didn't like what I almost thought I saw.
No, but you didn't see it. It's a good thing.
No, I mean, if I were to have seen it, I didn't though.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you didn't, because there's no power rankings until June 15th.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
I agree. I also almost came across it, and I don't want to comment on it, but I want to get mad at it. But
we wouldn't have liked what we would have seen theoretically.
Absolutely not. Yes.
No.
Correct. Yeah. Correctly incorrect. All right. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Comment below anything else you want. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. Go Yankees.
Later, skaters.